Okay,
You're ready. You're live.
very good. Announcement is made that adequate notice of this meeting has been given, that is being conducted in accordance with NJSA 10:4-6 et sec. of the New Jersey Open Public Meetings Act. If you could please stand for the Pledge of Allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
All right, this meeting is open to the general public. Is there anybody here who has something to bring before the board that is not on our agenda? Hearing no one come forward, we move on to the next item. We're not going to do the Pledge of Allegiance twice. We have some resolutions here. We have application 21.
Yes. How about roll call? I don't mean to interrupt, but what about roll call?
There we go. I'm sorry, I jumped right over that. Nora, would you call the roll, please?
Mayor Barbario.
Here.
Mr. Didich.
Here.
Councilman DePiero.
Here.
Mr. Meth.
Present.
Mr. Napolitano.
Here.
Mr. Stanziel.
Here.
Ms. Veely. Here. Chairman Dinsmore.
Here.
We also have our board planner, Mr. Weiser.
Here.
Board engineer, Mr. Canjiano, and our board attorney, Mr. Lagana.
Very good. Now, we've got some resolutions that we can approach. Do I have anybody here who would like to present the resolutions that we have? Application number 21:523. In your packet is an indication of who can vote. And
Yeah, you got a hand raised there, Tom.
all right.
Move the motion.
Mr.
Yeah.
Didich,
Yeah, I
please.
move the motion to approve application number 21:520.
Okay, do I have a second?
I'll second.
Thank you. Nora, would you call the roll, please?
Didich.
Yes.
DePiero.
Yes,
Dinsmore.
Yes. All right. Now, moving on, we also have a resolution for application 21:523. Is that in here? I don't see
I
that.
emailed.
I know. Who is eligible for that?
I'm sorry, you don't have that on your...
I'll make a motion. I'll recommend approval for application number 21-523, 7 Enton Realty Associates, 7 Enton Road, Block 202, Lot 903.
Anyone here can second it.
I second that. Each.
Thank you. All right, Nora, would you call the roll, please?
Barbario.
Yes.
Didich.
Yes.
DePiero.
Yes,
Meth.
Yes.
Napolitano.
Yes.
Stanziel.
Yes.
Veely. Yes. Dinsmore.
Yes. All right. We have an item on our agenda that is not on our agenda for tonight. We had, which case was that was delayed?
The 9 Mr. Chairman.
All right. We had an item on our agenda, 9 Enton Road. They have requested a delay until March 7th, I believe. And what they would like to do, and I believe this is reasonable to do, is they would like to come in and have us vote on a final resolution that night. I don't have any particular objection, but I'd like to have our attorney just broach the subject and say this is
Sure,
reasonable.
sure. The applicant has requested that the resolution be prepared in draft form so it could be voted on that evening. So after the presentation of evidence, if there's nothing that is earth-shattering, that has changed the underlying facts or the conditions that will be set forth by this board, then the board has the right and the ability under the municipal land use law to vote on the resolution following the presentation. I would just caution that if there is anything that is kind of changes, required modifications, I'll indicate to the board such, and it won't be adopted that evening, and it will be, disseminated and voted on at the later date, but the idea is to pass it at the same time after the presentation is complete.
I just wanted to make sure the board was aware that that would be the plan for that night, but of course, we would have the ability, as the attorney indicated, to say, we're not going to approve the whole thing tonight.
Mr. Chairman, do you know how many people they have testifying?
They had one engineer testifying. The attorney indicated that it was going to be a rather short presentation. There are no variances being requested. I think there was no design waivers as well, so it's a straightforward as-of-right application.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
All right, I thought it was important that the board be informed that this is going to be our procedure.
Only for that application, just may I add.
Absolutely, absolutely. All right, that brings us to the remaining item on our agenda for tonight, and that is application number 21:529, ADP Inc., 99 Jefferson Road, Block 736, Lot 7.4, preliminary and final major site plan for construction of solar carports.
Attorney is running a little late from a additional meeting. Done, and you gave her a call. I'm sure appreciate any flexibility you guys would have tonight.
Should we tell her it was denied?
Hmm?
Should we tell her it was denied because she wasn't here?
Say with 10?
Who's?
Yeah, she's on 10. Liz Durkin.
The attorney.
By the way, project manager for the Jefferson Road Solar Project.
She bringing food?
I hope so.
Well,
Want to take a 5-minute recess?
we
then,
can
Lee?
take a 5-minute recess and wait to see what the 5 minutes brings. All right?
Thank you.
Sure.
Gentlemen,
Call the roll, please. We are reconvening the meeting of the Township of Parsippany-Troy Hills Planning Board for Monday, February 7th, 2022. Please call the roll.
Mayor Barbario.
Here.
Mr. Didich.
Here.
Councilman DePiero.
Here.
Mr. Matt.
Present.
Mr. Napolitano.
Here.
Mr. Stanzio.
Here.
Ms. Deely. Here. Chairman Dinsmore.
Here. Okay. Counselor, you'd like to begin your case?
I am. Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. Members of the board, Elizabeth Durkin, D-U-R-K-I-N, from the Durkin firm on behalf of the applicant. And the applicant is Jefferson Road Solar Project 2021 LLC. And we're here this evening. I'll just do a brief introductory on the application and then just project the witnesses with us this evening. The applicant is respectfully requesting that the board grant preliminary and final major site plan approval. There are no variances being sought. There are certain waivers that are being sought so as to install solar carport canopies at the ADP property on Jefferson Road. The property is block 736, lot 7.4, and it's in your SED 5 zone. And this evening I have two witnesses with me. One is the engineer from Tetra Tech Engineering Firm, who prepared the plans that have been submitted to the board on behalf of the applicant. And then I also have the project manager from the applicant, any and all questions the board may have regarding solar carport canopy. I did review certain other applications that the board has granted approval, so I know that they're permitted in your zone. You all know that they're inherently beneficial on solar panels. So, and we did review the planner's report as well as the engineer's report. And we're here to answer any and all questions and have to give it to you as well, to review with the board.
Can you speak into the microphone? I can hardly hear you.
I'm sorry. Can you hear me now? I don't know if this mic.
Pull it closer, it's
Pull it
on.
closer to you. Okay.
You actually could not hear me?
I got bad hearing.
And plus we're
That's a
recording.
first for me. I mean, I take that as a badge of honor that the other thing, just as a matter of preference, Mr. Chairman, or as a matter of order, the application has been deemed, as soon as it's been deemed complete. I submitted an affidavit of notice and publication and completed everything with the land use administrator and Laura. So we just want to make sure for the record that we have been deemed complete. Okay.
I believe so. But have you seen the memo of December 20th, 2021 from BFJ Planning giving the listing of waivers?
Yes.
All right, if you want to walk through the...
Sure. So, once again, this is, as we've seen in the last couple of meetings, this was a report that was originally done by BFJ Planning from Susan Favate. We did not do the report, but I will do my best to represent her comments. If you look on page 1, this is, again, the December 2021 report. There are, under completeness, 18 comments. I'll try to go through them quickly. Under the requirement for DEP letter of interpretation regarding wetlands, there are no wetlands on the site, so Susan is recommending a waiver. In terms of protective covenants and deed restrictions, the applicant is asked to confirm that none exist.
I did submit those to the board. There are no easements or restrictions other than standard utility easements on the site.
Okay, and you submitted a letter to that effect?
Correct. I actually submitted the title report to the board.
Okay,
Yes.
I did not see that, but okay. In terms of Highlands, apparently the project will not increase impervious by more than 125%, so it's exempt. Recommended waiver. In terms of the zoning table, the table is missing any information on parking. Testimony should be offered on the site's compliance with parking requirements and any impacts. We'll wait for the testimony on that. Spot elevations, the applicant has indicated there are no new buildings or changes to the existing, so a waiver is recommended. Similarly, for the floor plans, no new buildings or changes, waiver is recommended. There's a question about parking aisle dimensions, access, and circulation. Testimony is requested to confirm no impacts. In terms of signage, fences, walls, and sidewalks, there are no changes, so a waiver is recommended. In terms of utilities, the way the report is written, it says there are no changes to the utilities that are proposed, and a waiver is recommended. I think, though, as I would request that the engineer, as part of the testimony, talk about what changes to the utilities are being made as part of the solar hookups. I don't know that I would agree that no changes are proposed. In terms of lighting, testimony is requested regarding the applicant, or from the applicant, regarding the canopies being internally lit with LED fixtures. The request is to confirm that there is no light spillage to nearby properties, I would say neighboring properties. In terms of landscaping, no landscaping is proposed. Testimony should be offered on mitigation for tree removal. And there is an extensive section in this report about the trees that are being removed. In terms of solid waste, use of non-residential buildings, traffic study, and environmental assessment report, there are no changes. Everything is as existing, so waivers are recommended on those items. And the last two items are conditions of preliminary approval being satisfied and separate sheets for final approval, and this is a combined application, so waivers are recommended for those two items. And that is, that ends the completeness section of her report.
Any questions by the board on those waivers? Anybody make a motion to approve the waivers?
Motion to approve the waivers?
Second. Very good. Nora, if you call the roll.
Okay, who seconded that, the waivers?
Mayor Barbario.
Barbario?
Yes.
Didich?
Yes.
DePiero?
Yes.
Nash?
Yes.
Napolitano?
Yes.
Stanzio?
Yes.
Seeley? Yes. Dinsmore?
Yes. I suppose I could have done that by voice vote. Okay, all right. Do you have any questions about the waivers?
I want to thank the board very much for passing that resolution.
Well,
We're good.
we did the waivers, so.
Within the application, I'm not sure how much the board has. I did make extra copies of some photos that we had submitted, but I'm happy to hand them out because I think they're helpful to show you the existing site and parking lot, and then there's some renderings of the proposed solar. Yes, great, you have them. Does everybody, because I did make additional copies. Does anybody need additional copies?
If you have them, I will take an additional copy.
Happy to hand them.
You don't have such things.
Thank you. Tell you what, I'll do like we did in school. And I'll go back to work.
Okay.
There are 11 photos that were submitted in our initial application. I don't know if they're submitted, I don't know what this board's preference is. If they're submitted as part of the application, you want to still mark it in as an exhibit?
No, it's not necessary.
It's mine. I broke it.
Okay. Are you ready for my first one?
I would hope so.
Okay, I respectfully request that the engineer be sworn in, Mr. Nichols.
Mr. McNichols, please raise your right hand.
Mark Nichols.
Do you swear or affirm the testimony you're about to give will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God?
I do.
Name and address for the record, please spell your last.
Sure. Mark Nichols, Nichols. Address is 314 West 94th Street, New York, New York, 10025.
Counsel, can you qualify the witness, please?
Certainly. Mr. Nichols, are you a licensed engineer? Or you can put your hand in there. Just qualifying.
Yes, I am.
And by whom are you employed by?
Tetra Tech Inc.
And Tetra Tech Inc., are they the engineers that prepared the plans that have been submitted as part of this application?
That is correct.
And have you been involved from the beginning on this project with Tetra Tech?
Yes.
Okay. So what is your position relative to the project on the team for Tetra Tech?
I'm the staff engineer that prepared the engineering drawings and calculations for the project.
But you're licensed in the state of New York, is that correct?
That is correct.
You're not licensed in New Jersey?
Yes, that's correct.
So you have a supervising engineer, Tetra Tech, that's licensed in New Jersey, correct?
Correct.
And his name is?
Brian Sealski.
And Mr. Sealski is the engineer who prepared the plans, correct?
Correct.
Okay, and he's actually here this evening as well. So I don't know if the board likes to swear him in, because I'd like to have Mr. Nichols qualified as an engineer to testify, since he is the one who's been primarily responsible for the plans. We also have the New Jersey licensed engineer. I have had non-New Jersey licensed professionals qualified before the board. The plans are all stamped and sealed by a New Jersey engineer.
Is he going to speak?
Excuse me?
Is he going to speak?
If the board would like him to speak, he can speak.
All right, well, to that point, you'll have to swear him in.
Why don't we swear him in? You can qualify him as well, and we can get his name on the record.
Okay, perfect.
Do you swear or affirm the testimony you're about to give will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God? Name and address for the record, please.
Brian Sealski, Sielski, 14 Slingerland Ave, Slingerland, Slingerland Ave, Queens, 07440.
I'll just get you qualified, Ms. Svensky. And you were just here, you heard that your associate, Mr. Nichols, has been sworn in to testify as the engineer who assisted on the Tetra Tech plans, correct?
That is correct.
Okay, and you are the engineer, you're employed by Tetra Tech?
That is correct.
Okay, and Tetra Tech is the engineering firm that prepared the plans and submitted this application?
Correct.
Okay, and you are the engineer, are you licensed by the state of New Jersey?
I am licensed by the state of New Jersey.
And your license is current as we speak here this evening?
My license is current.
Okay, and you are the New Jersey licensed engineer who signed and sealed the plans that were submitted on the application?
That is correct.
So you are the New Jersey supervising engineer on this project, is that correct?
Correct.
Okay. And Mr. Nichols works with you on this plan?
That is
Project. Okay, thank you. And Mr. Nichols, I just want to make sure for the record, you are also licensed by the state of New York as an engineer, correct?
That's correct.
Okay. So I have both engineers, if it pleases the board, I'd like both of them to be qualified and to testify as engineers, and then have Mr. Nichols proceed first, and if the board has any questions that they relate to Mr. Leskey needs to answer, we can do that.
Okay, just to satisfy my own curiosity, I'd like our fine attorney to tell me what the requirements are.
This is a new issue. This is one that I have not had happen. Counsel, can you give me, you said that you've had engineers non-licensed in the state of New Jersey testify regarding?
Yes, I
Okay.
have. I've had other professionals, architects as well. When you have projects such as this nature, there's a team of engineers that will work on that project. Obviously, Tetra Tech is an extremely large company, and they're throughout the United States, so.
I would just say that any testimony regarding the standards set forth by the New Jersey, the state of New Jersey, any legislation that is being followed and is required for this property, if he's giving testimony regarding measurements of, site descriptions, locations, I think that's more of fact witness testimony. Anything specific regarding standards, I would ask that Mr. Zaleski provide that testimony.
No, that's absolutely correct. And maybe an easier way of saying it is that relative to this application, anything that requires a licensed professional in the state of New Jersey, and here an engineer, there is a supervising New Jersey licensed engineer who's handling the project. It's just that we also have an engineer who can answer more directly the questions that the board is seeking in their review, who's licensed, who's part of the team, but his license is in New York.
The concern that I have is that the license for New Jersey is specific to New Jersey standards, correct? Or it's...
Well, they're licensed by the state of New Jersey.
Correct. Right, and that being because they're professionals with regard to the standards set forth by the state of New Jersey for construction and development.
Well, they're licensed to be able to be an engineer and practice within the state of New Jersey, no different than any other licensed professional. Correct.
So they're licensed, so a engineer who's licensed in the state of New York can practice in the state of New Jersey without any
The
issues.
plans are all signed and sealed by a New Jersey engineer.
That's my point, is that
Yes.
any testimony that's specific to the state requirements for soil movement, stormwater management, I don't believe he can testify to that.
I think you could give testimony to it. I think maybe a way to proceed is to have Mr. Nichols proceed. The New Jersey engineer is here as well. He'll be listening to everything, and then have him come on and confirm anything that relates to New
Here-
Jersey. Is that an easier way to proceed?
Yeah, the difference being is that he can present facts in terms of height, distance, things like that. He just can't draw conclusions based on his own expertise. That's where I have an issue.
Sure, no, fair enough.
So I think if it's more of a fact witness, then I have no problems with that. But if it's more of conclusory testimony based on his expertise, then I'm going to interject, because I don't believe he's licensed in the state of New Jersey to draw those conclusions, because he wouldn't have the license to be presumed to know that information.
That's fair enough.
Okay.
Fair enough. So,
Okay, are there any questions by the board on the witnesses here?
Well, I just like to interject that my understanding is, I'm a professional engineer in the city of New Jersey. There's a statute that you're the only profession that is not required to be licensed in New Jersey to provide engineering testimony for a board is, I believe, wireless engineers. That's it.
So RF engineers?
RF engineers, that's the one, yes. Otherwise, I'd be obligated to actually report to the board if I heard engineering testimony by a non-licensed professional.
So I think what we can do is, councils, qualify him.
yeah, so.
Okay.
Take it easy.
No,
Take it easy.
thank you.
Okay.
And he can supplement any factual information that can help you out, but again, the conclusions that you can draw inferences from have to come from him. So we can qualify Mr. Nichols as a fact witness and not an expert, and Mr. Soliski as a expert.
So that's what I'm asking the board now, that Mr. Letsky is sitting next to me.
Correct,
I
and
respectfully request, accept Mr. Letsky as a professional engineer and qualified before the board to testify as such.
Any questions by members of the board on this witness of his qualifications?
Just one question. Is your license current?
Yes, that question was asked, yes.
Oh, I'm sorry. Yes, thank you.
Mr. Meth, are you satisfied?
I am. Thank you.
It's important.
I would not be sitting here.
All right, hearing and seeing no questions here, Counselor, you have let's hear your case.
Oh, thank you so much. Ms. Sutsky, are you the engineer who prepared the plans that have been submitted as part of the application that's before this board this evening?
Yes,
Okay. And you understand the application is for solar carport canopies at an existing site, correct?
that is correct.
Okay. So can you just briefly explain to the board the proposed solar canopies and where they'll be located?
The canopies are to be positioned on the parking lot of the ADP property. They are basically going down the Center Island Road. Is that the information you're looking for? That's okay. So, as we have a rendering, I think you can see.
Yeah, sure.
Yeah, I think it's best to see the rendering.
And then just so that to familiarize the board with the site is just shy of about 18 acres, correct?
Correct.
Okay. And it's located in the SED 5, the Specialized Economic Development Zoning District, correct?
That is correct, yes.
And it's currently improved with a 3-story office building, correct?
That is correct.
Okay, which is occupied by ADP, solely by ADP, isn't that correct?
That is correct.
Okay. And there's also on the site existing parking.
That is also correct.
Okay. And there will be no additional impervious coverage other than the installation of the poles for the solar canopies, correct?
That is correct.
Okay. And the solar canopies that are proposed, there's the proposed development is to include 6 solar carport arrays in the existing surface parking lot, the south of the office building. Is that correct?
That is also correct.
Okay. And then if you look at, here is the 11 photos with renderings that were submitted as part of the application. Which photos you just saw me hand out to the board members?
That's correct, yes.
Okay. And you obviously have been to the site on several occasions, correct?
No, that is not correct.
Oh, you have?
No, I've driven by it.
Oh, okay.
But I've never,
Okay.
walked the site.
Okay.
It's on my way to my office, so
Okay.
it's
So if we look
it's
at
very familiar.
if we look at the first photo,
Solar. Yes,
that's a current site condition, correct?
that is correct.
Okay. This is a separate view, the
Mhm.
second photo.
Yep.
From the northeast corner of the parking lot, correct?
Yep, that's also correct, yes.
Okay. And then this will also help the board to orientate them when we get into the discussions regarding landscaping and trees, that in the second photo in particular, they can see some of the small little scrubby trees that will be removed
Yes,
Right.
on the island,
on
yes.
the islands and inside some of the parking areas,
Yes.
right? Okay. And then you see an existing condition picture, photo number 3, where there shows the buffering, and there's a residential neighborhood behind there, correct?
That is also correct, yes.
Okay. Again, picture photo 4, again, an existing condition picture, correct?
Correct,
And it shows the current parking lot on the southern side
yes.
of the site, and it also shows with some, I don't know if you would call those landscaping islands, I think there are some landscaping islands, but there are some little trees.
I have a quick question, just looking at the renderings. Are they gonna actually repave that parking lot before they go and throw all that stuff up? This parking lot looks
It's
pretty
funny-
dead.
It's funny, because that was a question that I asked as well, yeah. Yes, and Chris
Yeah.
Miller is witness number 2, who is totally a fact witness, the project manager for the applicant, and he can speak to that, but my understanding is yes.
Okay. I was gonna say, because why would you put canopies up and then have a parking lot that probably needs to be paved within like a year or two?
Yeah, exactly, and you can see it's in need of that, correct?
Yeah.
Yeah. Photo 5 also shows an existing site from the southeast corner, just another view of the existing parking lot, correct?
That is correct.
Okay, and 6, again, is just a different view and shows some of the islands with or without the trees,
That's correct.
okay? Then photo 7 is the proposed equipment pad location, correct?
That's also correct, yes.
Okay.
Can I ask a question about that photo number 7 while you're there? You just mentioned that no more impervious coverage would happen, but if you remove all this, what's going to go there? Does the equipment pad qualify as impervious coverage?
Yes, it's minimal though.
Okay. So there is some more impervious coverage then?
Correct. But, yes, but we'll get into that just because that's a, classification on the road. Okay. And then the Jefferson, photo number 9 is the view of the parking from the Jefferson Road, correct?
That is also correct, yes.
Okay. And now we go into the renderings. So rendering 1. This is a rendering of what the proposed carport solar canopy would look.
That's correct. That's the canopy for the center, the walkway.
Okay. And then rendering number 2,
Correct.
that's from the northwestern entrance,
Yes, correct.
the solar canopy. And then rendering 3 is viewed from the northeastern edge of the parking lot, is that correct?
That's also correct, yes.
Okay. And there will be 6 different solar panel arrays on the site, correct?
Yes.
With respect to the there's an existing walkway with the canopy. You're familiar with that, correct?
Yes, correct.
Okay. And then I'm going to show these photos. Yeah. So we're going to mark this in as A1. Is that what it is? Going to show 2 photos.
Yeah, right here. And they're right behind these bushes here. I cut down these trees. That's where they're.
Yes. Okay. What are we gonna call this, Counselor?
Excuse me?
What do you wanna call this?
Just A1, there's 2 photos existing there was questions in the engineering report regarding the canopy over the walkway.
So this is existing canopy?
Existing walkway and existing canopy. And the engineer will just testify a little bit to this, an issue on here, and then Mr. Miller will testify regarding, with the question regarding demolition.
Why don't we mark them separately? We'll do A1 for the first photo, because it's the picture of the walkway, and then A2 is the picture of the canopy and walkway.
Oh, okay.
Give that to Laura.
To the north, yes. To north.
Do you
have
have
any
more
more?
of the exhibit? Do you have more copies of the exhibit?
There's a numbered one that's supposed to go to Nora there.
Yeah, I got the number one.
Okay, thank you.
I have an
I don't need it.
There's more here. Yeah, I did 16 copies.
There's the extras.
Mr. Nussey, so you look in front of you, what's been marked in as A1 and A2, which are current photos taken of the walkway that has a canopy over it at this site, correct?
That's correct.
Okay. And it's your understanding that this canopy is going to be removed, the existing canopy is going to be removed, correct?
That is also correct, yes.
But the walkway is going to remain?
That is also correct, yes.
Okay. And then the proposed solar carport canopy will also, there'll be a new canopy over the walkway, isn't that correct?
That is correct.
Okay. And then relative, and you've had an opportunity to review the board engineer's review letter dated February 2nd?
Yes, correct.
Okay. And relative to the comment on the construction methods and the amount of property that is going to be disturbed, okay?
Yeah, yes, that is correct. The amount of property that is going to be disturbed is very minimal. The existing canopy, which is going to be removed, is going to be replaced with the rendering. If we go back, we saw rendering number 1, where it totally covers the walkway.
Let me just understand, so on what has already been submitted,
Mhm.
rendering number 1, which is page 9 of the 11 photos that were submitted, that is a rendering of over the walkway that's shown in A1, what's been marked in A1 and A2, is that correct?
That is correct.
Mr. Chairman, I just have a question. Just on that same line there, so the intent of my question was what you're getting at, but really, you're proposing that column line on this existing sidewalk and walkway?
That's correct, yes.
And is there enough room after the canopy is constructed and the pier and the foundation that there's adequate maneuverability and accessibility on this sidewalk?
Yes, correct.
And we also ask that you provide, if, should this be approved, details to that effect, dimension.
Dimension, you want it dimensioned? Okay.
Yeah.
Mark, can you just, what's that down?
But your testimony is you will have enough room to get that column line in this area of this existing walkway. That's what I'm trying to get to the bottom of.
Oh, yeah, the column is 3 foot diameter.
So we have something else that might help too.
Yeah.
We're gonna mark it as an exhibit. The one I mark that in now is A3. or more than enough. That'll help you. Okay. To get to that comment in the engineer's review.
This is where we're currently.
Mhm.
Walkway. That's the, yes. If you look at the renderings.
So the document that,
Was there an issue with,
Well, it's not clear, you still have a clear passage for pedestrians walking through that. That's why it needs to be dimensioned, so that
Okay.
when this goes to construction, should it be approved, there's no issues. You do have accessibility to proper width, also allowing for car overhang.
Mhm.
The way that the rendering looks like it would be right down the middle of it, and people would have to be navigating either left or right side of it.
Okay.
So we do have.
I mean, I think it should be sufficient to go down the middle, but I mean, is there a preference for the board?
Provide that additional information on the plan, so
Mhm.
there's no question.
Okay.
Just out of curiosity, how wide is the walkway?
It's on the survey.
I'd open them, but I don't want to disturb Jim.
Yeah,
You have a survey.
we all open them up. and we'll have a
Yeah, I
little-
don't think so. Yeah, it's
The walkway is about 8 or 9 feet wide. The column is 3 feet in diameter at the base. So you have 6 feet.
If it's off on one side, but if it's
Well,
centered,
then you have,
you have.
You have-
So,
you have like 3 feet on each side.
So you have 3 feet on each side, which could be further reduced by car overhang. When the fronts of cars overhang onto the walkway.
Okay.
Except they have bollards there.
No, those go with the canopy.
Right, you understand the concern that we have?
Yeah.
for the-
Also, I'm not sure if there are handicap parking at the end of the walkway.
Going right down the middle of that.
I mean,
Good question.
Yeah, and this right here is probably as wide as this.
well, it is. It's accessible. I don't know if it's accessible, but still.
I think if you look at the photo that we have marked in as
A1.
A1 and A2, particularly A1, it shows you some existing cars parked on that, in front of that sidewalk, correct?
That's correct.
Okay.
Well,
The existing bollards would also act as a,
They would be removed
these bollards are lined up with the columns for the canopy that you're taking down. Are you
You
gonna
take
leave the
down the
bollards
canopy,
in?
to remove the bollards.
Nor are they at every single space, from what I can tell.
They're only at the uprights for the canopy.
I guess to simplify matters, I think, as a board member, I prefer to see you put them on one side of the sidewalk and leave as much sidewalk as you can. Like, if you left 6 feet of sidewalk on one side with, allows for 2 feet overhang and still leaves a 4-foot walkway, which is compliant with code,
This won't be
with
balanced.
ADA.
This won't be balanced, though. It's gonna be
Yeah, I
upside.
agree, Gordon. I think that's the only way you can do that, is get it to one side.
So as a condition of approval, you would agree to work with our engineer to make sure that there's sufficient passageway
Of course.
to work underneath the overhang?
Yeah, plus I think at the end of the walkway, if there are handicap parking, there should be enough space for wheelchairs and everything to go there, yeah.
The other 5 canopies are directly access. So,
So Andrew, you're happy that they would work with you on making
Yeah,
sure that...
there's enough room if you lay it out correctly, but the bottom line is you need to provide the accessible route for a pedestrian and considering vehicles overhanging, so you'll need to work, you can't be in the center, it's not gonna work, so you have to offset that.
Would it satisfy the board if, because the center line may be required due to other design constraints, but as an option, which I'll look into both, but would it satisfy the board if we used, in order to keep overhang away, the bumpers on installed on the parking lot? So if the front tire hits,
I'll
it
leave
can't
it
go
up
any
to the
further?
board, but we have to check the depth of the
Yeah.
parking spaces.
It's in concrete.
All 18 feet.
Things in the front.
Our objective
Overhang.
here is to simply make sure that there's sufficient space for a wheelchair
For
or
ADA
other...
compatible, yes.
Exactly.
Mhm.
For the entire length of the...
Yes.
Okay.
Okay.
And you and our engineer would work that out
Okay.
to his satisfaction.
Yes, absolutely.
Yeah, I
Okay.
think that's fine.
But I just want the leeway, if, would that be acceptable if I went that path with the board, as long as, it was ADA compatible?
Submit revised.
Yeah.
We're giving you room here to work
Okay.
with the engineer to prove to
Oh.
him that you're satisfying the needs of New
ADA.
Jersey statutes.
Yes, okay.
We need to make sure that the walkway is ADA compliant.
Mhm.
Correct.
Exactly.
And that it's accessible for
Mhm.
people.
And whatever form that takes, I don't want to know the details. I want it
I'm right there
to
with you.
work
Right,
for somebody in a wheelchair.
right, got it. And as a condition of an approval, is that our engineer will work with the board's engineer to make sure the board's engineer is satisfied that we've met that condition.
Exactly.
Okay.
Right, again, just to reiterate, right, not, walkway is great, right, as per the, conditions we laid out. But if there are handicap parking at the end of the walkway, and if there are ramps, we want to make sure that those ramps are still accessible even after the,
Is that
Yeah.
area got the wheelchair accessible,
Got it.
or is that over to the side?
Yeah.
I would think that the ADA spots would be the closest to the building.
Right.
They probably got that.
yeah.
Yeah, that's a very good point. I would add that if they're not accessible now, when you provide that survey,
yeah, you want, yeah.
also do it,
I think we should enter the
Yeah,
survey.
we're gonna, we were, just so I continue marking in what I'm, marked in as 8th grade?
Yes,
Okay.
and we call it
So-
solar canopy elevations.
Correct, okay. So then we have that, so we can testify to there. Then what I'm gonna mark in, it's just a small copy, I'm happy to provide larger sets. A4 is, we do have current survey of the site boundary and the parcel profile.
Council, what's the date of that survey? Council, what's the date of the survey?
July, it's July 7th, 2021.
Thank you.
Your eyesight is amazing.
No.
I don't think this survey
Do you
can,
have large prints that I can email and hard copy? How many people
Break that
need
down
the
to more.
survey? Yes, and also on, obviously on the plans that were submitted.
Tough copy to Nora,
There was also,
and I didn't bring my reading glasses.
it references it. If you look at the site plan,
It does not look like any of the,
baseball.
ADA compliant spaces are on that walkway.
they're not.
That is correct. They're
They're all-
actually
they're all-
to the adjacent to the building, to the,
Yes.
north, actually to the west side of the building.
There's at least one to the east side.
So if we look at your existing conditions plan, C-101, part of the submitted plan, it clearly shows the marked handicap parking spaces, correct?
That's correct, yes.
And it shows them to be adjacent to the building
Correct.
and not adjacent to the walkway that was just, what we had been discussing,
That
correct?
is also correct.
So just to finish up on the one comment that we were discussing from the engineer's review letter.
Could you please speak into the mic?
On disturbance, on the land disturbance, it's less than 5,000 square feet, correct?
That is correct. Wait,
Okay. Oh,
Counsel, you could bring Mr. Nichols up. Stuff like, I have no problem if he's testifying as to those kind of factual determinations.
yeah,
Instead of doing the,
yeah, where are the parking zones?
so,
So just on a, just Mr. Nichols can testify just factually. Did you have it on these notes? Okay. Well, the engineer, or the board had a question, the first thing is regarding the number of parking spaces, existing parking spaces.
Okay,
yeah, 866.
that's total.
Including the 17 handicap
Yeah. And 849 non-handicapped.
and 17 handicap spaces existing right now, correct?
Correct.
So there's more than sufficient parking for the building, correct?
That is correct.
So on the question on disturbance. Now, the engineer's review, I don't know, did the engineer have any other questions regarding the parking spaces, number of parking spaces?
Well, that wasn't my question, but now that it came up and it was part of the completion, I asked that you update that, and provide the table, the parking table, based on the building square footage and the town ordinance, and that just to show that it's in compliance. I didn't have any of the parking questions. I did have other questions on my letter, for testimony.
Okay. So to go back to the engineer's letter. So we have no problem with submitting revised plans showing the parking, correct?
That's correct.
So the next question is regarding the fire department's review. Correct? That was the issue?
Well, it's kind of, my big question was, there wasn't a lot of detail shown on the plan. I'm interested in the canopies, what the heights, the lower height, the upper height. Was there an issue with circulation? Also, what's being proposed as far as electrical equipment, trenching, and the like? So if you kind of go through what's being proposed, may be a good approach to cover some of this stuff.
Okay, so if we want to go to that testimony now, which I have no problem with, I need to have Mr. Miller sworn in as to what the
I would like to finish the engineering part of it.
I'm happy to do that.
Just-
So,
yeah.
Chris Miller's the project manager who can go view on on what your engineer is asking about.
Yeah, that's really the more engineering questions, like, how you're gonna hook up to your electric, where you're gonna run your conduit, height of the canopy, is it proper for site circulation, emergency vehicle access? It's really engineering, not project management testimony.
Okay. So if we look to,
Would you please speak into the mic?
what was marked in as A3, the rendering, correct? Okay. So can you be so kind as to briefly describe the proposed solar carport array? There's going to be 6 of them. So just on a typical, you can look at what's been marked in as A3 as a rendering.
Can you just try to slide that mic towards you? I'm looking at the screen over here, and it's the green bar only goes this high when you talk, which means it's not really coming through it in the system. Just could you just slide it as close as you can to your mouth?
Yeah,
Now I see it. Now I see the bars. Because the green bar shows up on our screen.
You're being recorded,
And
we're not
it-
picking you up.
It just picks you up, it'll be a large bar. It's only this wide, so it's not picking you up at all. So if we go to review this at some point, I can be able to hear you on the fly.
Oh, okay, I'm sorry.
okay. From the rendering, you can
That's great. That's great. Thank you.
And you got to restart over, by the way.
from the rendering,
Yeah.
you could see, do you need her to speak again, or?
No.
No,
Yeah,
okay.
So let's just make sure the board knows what you're looking at. You're looking at what's been marked in as A3, correct?
That's correct, yes,
Okay.
A3.
That gives the dimensions, correct?
Yes, this will give the dimensions of the operation of the array panels. There's 2 different panels here. There's a 6H and an 8H. The bottom panel is the one that is proposed for that center walkway section. The top one is more of the standard size for the remaining arrays that go down the parking lot. They have a certain height and width, and they're usually it's a 14, I believe 14 feet on the low end, while the upper end can be up to 20 feet plus, 21. And that's the case for both panel sizes. As far as the actual construction of them, I would have to defer that to the actual firm that builds these.
But if you look at what's also been marked in the part submitted, the renderings, right? Rendering 1, rendering 2, and rendering 3, correct?
Yes, correct.
Okay, so those are the proposed solar panel arrays, carport arrays.
That's correct.
So if we're looking at what's been marked in as rendering 1, is that one solar carport array?
Correct. That's actually the 8H bottom array on exhibit A3.
And there will be six of these that are proposed on the site, correct?
That's the center one. The others are the top one.
And approximately, let's just talk about the traffic flow as it exists on the site now. Will there be any difference once the solar carport arrays are installed as to the flow of traffic and the circulation of traffic on site?
No, there would be no change in the traffic patterns.
So in your professional opinion, there's no negative to the installation of the solar carport arrays to the site for traffic?
Correct. And there would be, this existing condition would continue.
And when you say this existing condition, where people park now, where they, come on and off, the ingress and egress to the site will not be affected at all?
That's correct.
Okay. And then in terms of parking, is the only difference now that some of the cars will be parked underneath the canopy?
That's also correct.
Okay. And with respect to the canopy, do they have any negative impact to the flow on the site of traffic?
No, they have no impact.
Is there, in your professional opinion as an engineer, is there any negative impact to the installation of the solar carport arrays on the site?
Again, no.
So let's talk about runoff. how is the runoff handled, on the, with the installation of the solar carport canopies?
Yeah, these canopies have gutter systems which will capture the runoff, and that will go into the existing system that is there, which we're gonna do some minor upgrades, I believe, right, Mark? Minor upgrades, yeah.
So there'll be no negative impact?
That's correct as well.
So and what about the impervious coverage? Is there an increase of the impervious coverage on the site?
There is a very minor impervious coverage increase due to the islands, which are obviously gonna be modified at that point. And the equipment pad, yes, which,
And the proposed equipment pad, that is shown in the photo that's been submitted, or the location of it, in photo number 7, correct?
yes, that location is correct, yes.
And do you know approximately the dimensions of the, or I should ask you, the proposed equipment pad will be located? Yes.
Approximately 4 by 8 foot.
4 by 8.
And will there be screening on the equipment pad?
Yeah, there was none proposed.
You talked about with respect to the height of the proposed canopy, is there a sufficient height to allow trucks and cars and the circulation as it exists now?
Correct, yes.
And what about any safety measures? Are there adequate safety measures regarding, if these solar carports are installed relative to cars, or any negative to any safety issues, life and safety hazard issues with the installation, in your opinion?
What's your question again?
In your opinion as an engineer, is there any negative, if the solar carport canopies are installed, is there any negative to any safety measures on the site as they exist now?
In my professional opinion, no.
Okay, so, and the lighting plan, have you been prepared or involved with the proposed lighting plan?
No, the lighting plan was performed by another firm, actually. So I'm not, I will not comment on that.
But your firm did handle the landscaping plan that was submitted as part of this application, correct?
That's correct, yes.
Okay. And then you understand that there's approximately 52 trees to be removed?
That's correct.
Okay. And the location of those 52 trees are primarily in, you can show them in the photos, correct?
Correct. I think it's,
Well, you can see them if you look at photo number 2, correct?
correct. And then,
These other trees on the islands, is that what you're doing?
Some of them correct, and then also in photo number 4, I think in photos number 4 and photo number 5, correct?
Not number 3. Number 3 is the,
3 shows some of them, but I think if you look at photos number 4 and 5, that really gives you a very good idea of the existing trees that are going to be removed, correct?
correct. None of 3, though.
So, I mean, photo 4 and photo...
Yeah, photo 4 and
Not
photo
3.
3.
3 is the buffers for the residential
Yeah,
area.
that's the pedestrian.
I apologize, yeah. Photo 2. Here's the proposed, it's not in this plan.
Yes.
So, have you had an opportunity to review the landscaping plans that your firm submitted?
Actually, yes.
Okay, great. Okay, so relative to some of the trees that are existing now that are in islands, not all of those trees are proposed to be removed, isn't that correct?
Not all of them, correct.
Okay. And the primary amount of the trees that are going to be removed are just the smaller trees that are spattered throughout the existing parking area, correct?
Correct.
And then relative to the site as it is now, there's a pretty dense buffer of trees and other growth between this property and the adjoining residential, correct?
Correct.
And that is shown on photo number
That would be
three, correct?
Correct.
Okay. But even given that the proposal is to plant some new plantings in that area to give an additional buffer with the residential neighbors, correct?
That's correct.
Because there's no other place within the parking area where you could plant new trees if with the installation of the solar carport panels, isn't that correct?
That's correct.
Do you know approximately how many trees are being planned to be planted in that area that is shown in that photograph three?
I believe 7, 11, 7 to 11.
So as a condition of approval, it would be, you would agree to, the applicant would, to 11 new trees being planted in that area, is that correct?
That's correct.
Council, is there any specific species recommended, or is that something that you would work with the township? It's in the landscaping plan?
In the landscaping plan, which has been submitted, I have my copy, I'm happy to give them to you.
It's fine.
It's in the landscaping plan.
If there's no comments from the township professionals, then that's fine. I just want to know if it was provided.
Yeah. That's the plan that's submitted.
Yeah, it is like that.
You want to comment?
Yeah, comment.
Red spider pear,
Spider pear,
red spider pear,
red spider pear,
white spruce,
white spruce,
green spider lemon.
and green spire island.
Okay. So I believe that the engineer has testified on all the issues set forth in your engineer's report. I assume the engineer.
One more question, and the lighting. There's existing high-mast lighting throughout the parking lot that would be in conflict with the new canopy. There was no lighting plan submitted, so we do ask as a condition, and just as a general condition, as our February 2nd letter, do you, as a condition of approval, would you agree to all the comments, providing the additional details asked for, lighting details, drainage details, and the like?
Yes.
So what is the game plan with the lighting, and you need to submit, have you looked at the lighting? And what is the game plan?
Yes, and that's going to be, Mr. Miller is going to testify on the lighting. And I have a canopy lighting plan to submit as an exhibit this evening. Okay. But for the engineer's not going to testify on that issue.
Why? Because the lighting was designed by someone else? Or-
The lighting was not designed by my firm.
Yeah, well, the fact witness can give us an understanding of what's being proposed, but again, I asked that the lighting plan be submitted, prepared, and in accordance with the township standards, and showing the Isolux lighting, and showing that it casts enough light on the parking lot and doesn't overcast the property line.
Absolutely. Yeah. And obviously, any approval would be conditioned to you approving those plans.
Is there any testimony that you can provide in terms of how much is being removed and how much is being added? I know light levels,
In lighting?
correct,
Yeah, Mr. Miller's going to testify to that.
and the amount of what's being
Correct.
removed, okay.
I don't have any further questions of the engineer. I didn't know if your engineer or the board has any questions.
Are members of the board have questions of this witness?
Yes, Mr. Chairman?
Mr. Napolitano?
Thank you. Thank you for these pictures. They help us get a good idea of what we're looking at here. I just need a couple things. To clarify, this A1 is the canopy that's here? Is that there now?
That's what's there now.
And it's coming down?
Coming down.
Okay. So that's back here, this thing's coming down in the back. On the 11-page one.
11 page. Yes.
Yes.
That's coming down,
Correct.
okay. All right, as for the excess of 50 or so trees you're removing, can they go somewhere else in the property? I know you said you're doing, replanting 11, and you'll work with the, town forester on that, which is great, thank you, but that's still a loss of 42 trees or so. Can they go somewhere else to the property? Can they be replanted at, I don't know, one of the schools in town, something? Is that something you'd be, able to do?
We would certainly work with your forester on it. It's really, as I said, you look at the site is already pretty, buffered heavily.
Oh, sure, these trees, they look rather young, so I don't want to lose all those. You know, and the pictures that are here, they look like they could be, transported, replanted, so maybe you could work with,
Happy to work with the forester on it.
something you could possibly do? Thank you.
Yeah.
Yeah, not enough water.
Yeah. Okay, other
Mr.
questions?
Chairman.
Mr. Deitch?
So, real quick, I'm looking at the rendering one, and then I look at the exhibit A1, I think. So that's clear to me, right? There is a, canopies are going to be on this walkway, so that's good. Now, what I'm not clear about is how many canopies are we installing and where are they going on this plan, right?
Okay, so when you look at the survey, that's page 4, so look, as I said, I'll give you. If you look at the survey, it's right here. The canopy, right?
Yep.
Yeah. So if you look at A1, and we'll submit a larger copy, the canopy is this dark line that's here. That runs from the
That's the walkway, right? Yeah, that's it? Just on the walkway?
Right here.
That's all?
Yes.
And if, let's look at picture, which is, you know, the first photo 1, it shows you in a distance. That's the canopy. The distance.
It shows the site plan as well.
Yes, the site plan shows it as well.
Right, but in the rendering one, I see there are more canopies on the left and right of that walkway. That's what I'm not clear about.
Yeah, there will be.
So where are they going on that plan?
Well, I think the question is, are all 6 of the canopies shown on the plans that you submitted?
On the site plan, yes.
Okay.
Right.
I
Alright.
I don't have it, so.
They're on the site plan.
Can you guide us where that is? I'm not able to find it yet.
Yes.
I don't want to guess it right now.
If you look, it appears, if you look, sir, on C201, sheet C201.
C201.
There it is. So, this is the walkway here.
Right, okay.
That's that, on that smaller plan, that's the gray. And then there's, if you go up from there, there's 2. That line, there is no, next to the curb line where the trees are between Jefferson, there's no, array there. And then, if you go back down to the walkway, 1, 2, and 3. So that would be those 3 rows.
Okay. So one next question I have is on the, other than the walkway one, other arrays of solar canopies, we are not creating any additional walkways for those, right? We are not losing any space, that's what I mean, the question, okay.
No space.
Because if you lose space, then that means we are going to lose parking spaces as well. right?
Correct.
We are not losing that.
No.
Okay.
Any further questions, Mr. Deitch?
I'm good, thank you.
Okay, let me just ask other members of the board. Any other members, Mr. Math?
Just one. In the exhibits A1 and A2, when I look at the curb on here, it looks like part of it's disintegrating. Is that gonna be replaced as part of this plan?
Let's know if the curb is
Oh,
replaced.
right there.
You would have to speak to that.
Okay, I'll wait for him to be sworn in. And, I guess the bollards that appear to be on this picture seem to be aligned with the columns for the canopy. So do they go with the canopy, I guess? Just want to clarify that. I know we kind of talked about that earlier.
Yeah, they'll go with the canopy, they'll be demolished too.
The trees will go too, and then where the trees are, the little Vs, those will be coming out. And the curb will be straight down, right? Where the
No.
trees are sticking out,
Those will remain.
the trees will remain?
The Vs.
Will they be planted with,
They'll be-
shrubbery.
They'll be under the canopy though, right? Under the solar panels, right?
I think the trees that are existing, and again, Mr. Miller can testify to this, but existing trees that would be underneath the proposed canopy will be removed, correct?
That's what I just said.
Yes,
Yes.
but there are some trees that are outside of the canopy.
No, I was just
area
talking about-
That are in the parking lot.
I was talking about the
that will
1
be
and
made.
2.
Only those that have to be removed will be removed.
I think the question is also the curbing. Is the curbing going to be made straight? Because conversation earlier was that you needed the 4-foot walkway. And how would that impact, if you're going to leave those planter boxes there, how is that going to impact the walkway?
Oh, I see what you're saying. The trees that are shown for A1.
On A1, correct.
Those would be removed.
Those would be
Because those are going to have a canopy underneath them.
That's
correct?
okay. I think
Yes,
that's what the
right.
question is.
That's what I
Yes, sir.
said.
Those will be
Yep.
removed.
All right, other members of the board have questions of this engineer at this time? Hearing and seeing none, our planner, I think, has a question or two.
I have several, yes, thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Silsky, have you read the BFJ planning report, dated December 20th?
That is, yes,
This-
No,
this
not-
is-
that's a-
Yeah, this is.
yes, somewhere.
Yeah, very good.
Yes.
Okay, there are a number of things, I'm gonna help you walk through it. On the first page, the zoning table, I think the engineer spoke about this too, you're gonna revise the zoning table to address the compliance issues as noted,
Correct.
okay? Under parking, I know you confirmed that there would be no impact to parking, but can you just sort of expand on that with respect to the specific question that parking aisle dimensions, access, and circulation will continue to, or will be made to conform if they don't, or will continue to conform to township standards?
That's correct. Yes.
Okay, next page. Item 20, lighting. I know you don't want to deal with lighting at all, but can somebody, as part of your group, testify that no lighting will be spilled out onto adjoining properties?
Well, the applicant can tell you that, that's correct.
Counsel,
And
would
can
you,
make that a condition of approval.
would you agree to a
Absolutely.
6-month review that the board retains jurisdiction over lighting for a period of 6 months? And if there's any issues, that lighting will have to be dimmed at the direction of...
Absolutely. No issue.
Thank you.
Okay, and then, the last one on that page, you spoke about that you did submit a, landscaping plan, that there is a tree removal and mitigation plan, that will be made a condition of approval?
Correct.
Okay. If you go to the last page of her report, before we go to that, well, no, let's do that. Last page, item 1, the zoning data we already talked about. Item 2, tree removal, we talked about. Switchboard equipment, is that going to be screened?
The equipment, you mean the equipment for the pattern?
It says, I'm going to guess, I didn't write the report, but it's item 3.
We certainly can make a condition if the board would like the equipment pad to be screened.
Okay.
For screening, that's not an issue.
And should the board do that, do we know how tall the equipment is going to be?
Okay, Mr. Miller can testify to that.
Okay. I just want to, as part of your testimony, there is a fence height requirement, that we should make sure that, we either conform with or variance is requested for it, as part of that screening. Lastly, have you guys taken a look? You show a height on A3, max height of 21 foot 4 inches and some fraction thereof, for the H6, 6 H's, and the 8 H's, a height of, boy, it looks like 29 feet 1 inches and some fraction. Have you made sure that that conforms with the variance or with the maximum height requirement for a accessory structure in this zone?
Actually, no, I did not. Zoning table?
You did.
You did?
I don't see anything for accessory structures on this zone.
Building height, that's principal structure.
Yeah.
The ordinance allows 15 for an accessory.
15 feet? So we're looking at a C variance for the height of these accessory structures.
We'll have to get a variance.
And is there somebody, are you a planner as
No, I'm
well?
not.
Are you able to testify as to the positive and negative criteria required for a variance?
For a planner, as a planner, no.
Oh, Are you, as an engineer, are you able to
Engineer, yes.
testify?
Yes.
Okay.
So, do you want that testimony now? Is it okay, just gonna-
No, I think why don't you continue to put on your affirmative case, and then as you're wrapping up, to go through the variance justifications.
Well, as I said, when we made the application, there was no variance relief, but I'm happy to amend the application for the board this evening and respectfully request if a variance is required for the height of an accessory structure, that it will not exceed the height that's shown in A3.
Okay, and do we have any issues, Counselor, in terms of the public notice?
Council, did your notice have a catch-all provision?
Yes, it does.
Okay,
absolutely.
thank you.
Because it was discovered at this meeting now, I have no issues that the notice is deficient. You can proceed under the notice as provided.
So we'll just make sure we remember at the end of the night, in terms of wrapping up, that we include that. I'm sorry, that is all that is all I have at the moment.
Okay. Any other questions by our professionals or members of the board?
I have two questions. There was comment by the fire department on the letter dated December the 13th. I don't believe there was any testimony regarding the location of the shut-offs and how the signage would be provided.
Right. We have, Mr. Miller's going to testify to that.
Okay. There was also correspondence from the Morris County Soil Conservation District. The letter that I have is dated January 4th, noting the application is incomplete. As a condition, I'm sorry, is the letter still correct? Is its status incomplete?
Correct, yes.
Yes,
It's not completed yet.
Okay, so as a condition, you'll have to provide the Soil Conservation District final determination as to this project. And that'd be, you satisfy all their requirements. Okay, Mr. Chairman, I have nothing else.
Right. And we already submitted a waiver from Morris County Planning Board.
It's either comply or provide the waiver, correct? Okay.
Yeah, correct.
Thank you. Right.
Okay, any other members of the board or professionals hearing and
Just wanted to verify on the height. Can you testify as to the maximum height of the highest point of the highest canopy? And that regard is going back to the accessory structure.
21, 4 and a quarter.
On the 6th.
On the 6th.
Do you have a number?
23 and 13 16 on the 8 high.
Can you repeat that again?
23 and 13 16 on the 8 high.
That's 23, not 29?
Yes.
Okay.
23.
What exhibit, what are you reading from?
A3.
A3, that was,
Yeah.
okay.
Okay. You know what? I must have stopped. Sorry.
There you go.
I didn't notice when I didn't share all the toys.
Thank you. Thank you.
Okay. No other questions of this witness at this time? All right, just going to ask, even though there's nobody here, are there any members of the public who have any questions of this witness at this testimony at this time? Hearing and seeing none. Counselor, you have another witness.
I certainly do, Mr. Chairman. I'd like to swear in Mr. Miller.
Yeah.
Please raise your right hand. Do you swear or affirm the testimony you're about to give will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God?
I do.
Name and address for the record, please.
Name is Christopher Miller. Business address is 200 Harborside Drive, Suite 200, Schenectady, New York, 12305.
Thank you. Counsel, please qualify the witness.
Mr. Miller, are you employed by, or I should say, who's your employer?
Distributed Solar Development LLC.
And are they a wholly owned subsidiary of the applicant? That's pending on the applicant, the application is pending before this board, Jefferson Road Solar Project 2021 LLC?
Yeah, the applicant is a wholly owned subsidiary of DSD, which is a wholly owned subsidiary of BlackRock Real Assets.
Your employer, DSD?
DSD, yes.
Okay. And are you the project manager on the application, on the project that's subject to the application this evening?
Yes.
Okay. And you've been here this evening, you've heard the board's questions and comments regarding the application so far?
Yep.
Okay, as well as the board's planner and engineer?
That's correct.
Okay, so let's just start with what's been marked in as A1, the two photos of the canopy?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, and you heard, so let's just go on the question regarding demolition that was set forth in the board engineer's letter on the walkway there.
Okay. Alrighty.
What are, can you please just briefly describe to the board, what are the applicant's plans for demolishing that walkway?
Yeah, so for the walkway, ideally what the construction team has planned at this time is a lull of some sort with a harness to hold the, I'll call it the metal structure in place, upon which they'll cut the bolts at grade, put these into a recyclable dumpster, and in general, it would be sections of 8 to 10 feet in total removed per time, and the anticipated timeline is no more than a week to remove that.
So the entire walkway will be demolished and rebuilt, is that correct?
Demolished, not rebuilt.
Okay. There won't be a walkway there?
Oh, yes, there will be a walkway. The back and forth of walkway versus covered structure.
Another covered, the walkway, right?
Yes, that's correct.
Sidewalk.
Yes.
Okay. And then you see in the pictures there where the one board member is concerned about the areas that have been, that's disturbed, that's eroding on the walkway there?
Yep.
So that will be a non-issue because you're installing a new walkway, correct?
Correct.
Okay. And then you also heard the board the board member raised an issue in the beginning regarding the condition of the parking lot, whether or not it will be paved and sealed at some point, seal coated?
That is at the discretion of the property owner. I don't have any knowledge of their plans with the parking lot beyond what my project is proposing.
Okay, so in your proposal, is there any proposal for the sealing or paving of the parking lot, to your knowledge?
No.
Okay. And with respect to the issue regarding the landscaping and the landscaping design, you heard the testimony regarding that there will be 52 trees removed?
Correct.
And there's a proposal in the submitted landscaping plan of installing about 11 trees in the area that's by the residential neighbors, correct?
That's correct.
Okay. But as a condition of the approval, the applicant would agree to work with the town forester and potentially replanting any of the trees that are removed either in another area or additionally, correct?
Absolutely.
With respect to the fire inspector's review letter, which was also addressed in the board engineer's letter, you reviewed those comments, correct?
Correct.
Okay. And then we're going to mark in what has been, I think we're at A5, correct?
Correct.
A5, that's correct.
Okay.
What are we calling it?
A5, correct?
Yeah, what are we
So
calling
I
it?
have marked on mine A5, right?
What is it?
A5 is the labels and signage. That's what it's called,
For the
to address the
electrical,
the fires.
for the electrical
I'm
equipment?
going to give you copies right now. And Mr. Miller, just for the board's benefit, you're familiar with the site, correct?
That's correct.
You've been to the site on numerous occasions, correct?
Yep.
Top
Okay.
one to the north. Top in the north. Passing down.
Does the board have what's been marked in? That's A5?
A5? Yep.
Okay. So, Mr. Miller, you're familiar with what's been marked in as A5, correct?
Yes,
Okay, as a matter of fact, you provided this exhibit to me, correct?
correct.
Okay, and it's entitled Labels and Signage?
Yep.
Okay, and part of your company, they prepared this document, correct? DSD?
That's correct.
Okay, and that was at their direction that this was prepared, correct?
Correct.
Okay, and you obviously, in your work, are very familiar with, you deal only with solar panels and solar carports, correct?
Only solar panels, but yes, multiple configurations of them.
Okay, so with respect to these are kind of briefly described to the board what has been marked in as labels and signage A5.
Yeah, so you'll see a bolded line, essentially, that is where the electrical equipment pad would be located, as well as the disconnect, upon which, right, there will be some signages for shut-off, with the applicable labels, as needed. And on the left side of the diagram, you'll see the corresponding, like number 5, right, says solar AC switchboard, that corresponds with its location.
This is showing the proposed 6 canopies, carport solar canopies, correct?
Correct, with any and all applicable labels and signage that may apply to the project.
And these labels and signage, not only are they important to you and to the property owner, but for first responders, correct?
Exactly.
And you review the fire inspector's review that was submitted as part of this application, correct?
Correct.
Okay. And in that review, there's a request for a diagram showing this signage, correct?
Yep.
Okay. And then with respect to fire and safety or first responders, if required by this board or the municipality, would the applicant be willing to do any specific training that might be required for the solar carport canopies?
Yeah, that's actually preferred.
And when you say, just to briefly let the board know, what do you mean when you say preferred?
We like to have safety in mind. We want the first responders to be comfortable, understand what they have to do in the event of an emergency, to shut the system off. Yeah.
Okay. I don't know if the board engineer has any other questions on that issue regarding labels and fire.
No, I haven't.
Okay, great. So we move on to the next issue regarding lighting. Okay. So I'm going to mark in what's been marked. A6. Okay. Okay, so the mark is in A6. Turning. And we'll also mark in A7. Testify to this document.
One for Nora. Okay. Again, top one for Nora.
Does the board have A6 to make?
Yes. A6 titled Canopy Lighting Plan.
Canopy lighting plan, E120, and then A7 is marked equipment data sheet, E600.
The lighting. Yeah. Correct.
Mr. Miller, you have what's been marked A6 and A7 in front of you, correct?
Correct.
Okay. So, and your instructions, your DSD's instructions, you have a lighting plan, canopy lighting plan created, correct?
That's correct.
And that's what's shown on A6, correct?
Yes.
Okay. And then also on A7, is this the equipment for the lighting? Is that what that is?
Yes, so A7 is all the equipment, the panels, modules, inverters, the DAS system, as well as the LED lights to be used.
Okay. So if we look at A6, so there are existing light poles in that parking lot now, correct?
That's correct.
And do you know approximately how many of the existing light poles will be removed for the installation of the solar carport canopies?
Yes, approximately 6 in total, and the only ones to be removed are those proposed that conflict with the footprint of the array.
Do you know approximately how many light poles there are on the site?
I would say around 10.
Okay. And then, so relative to A6, can you just briefly describe to the board what is the proposed lighting plan for the canopies?
Yeah, so you'll see, and it may be a little small, but there are little bullet point black dots that shows the proposed location for the lights shown on A7 as well. They're approximately 3 inches, 3.5 or so inches in size tall, and approximately 19 inches wide, and they'll be mounted to the underside of the canopy, pointing downward to shine light for the parking lot.
Okay. And do you know approximately whether or not the foot candle, and these are going to be LED lights, correct?
That's correct. And they typically have a dimming effect or ability to be dimmed, given the scenario or needs of the site.
And you did hear the board's recommendation for a condition to any approval that there would be a 6-month window that after the installation of the lighting, as if there is a negative impact of the lighting on any of the adjoining neighbors, that you will agree to revisit and reduce that lighting so as not to negatively impact on the neighbors. You heard that, correct?
Yes,
Okay. And you agree to that condition?
I do.
Okay. And relative to A7, you just briefly describe to the board what A7 is?
A7 is the specification sheet for all
applicable equipment for the site, in particular in regards to lighting, the furthest right upper hand corner and the furthest right lower hand corner are in regard to lighting.
I don't have any additional questions on lighting. I don't know if the board engineer has any specific questions.
Oh, no, that this needs to be submitted, and again, I see that the lighting is provided underneath the canopy and in the immediate vicinity of the canopy, but this will need to be updated to include the areas that were previously lit by the existing lighting, the drive aisles in the area, the existing drive aisles in the area between the canopies and the building, you know, to show that you have sufficient lighting without overspill over the property line.
Yeah, absolutely. And the foot candle ratings to speak to kind of the change right throughout.
Yeah, I see the ones you have, but it cuts off.
Yeah, I gotcha.
I was gonna say, this particular exhibit doesn't show the lighting affected by the remaining stanchions.
Understood. Okay.
No, we understand that any condition of approval would be subject to the submission of a lighting plan to be reviewed by the board and engineer.
Right. Absolutely.
Correct.
Any other questions by members of the board of this witness on this testimony at this time? Any questions from our professionals?
Actually, just because we talked about a height variance, let me ask you a question. It's necessary for these panels to be mounted at a certain height to clear vehicles underneath them and whatnot, correct?
That's correct.
Okay, thank you.
I have one question, Mr. Chairman. You said that the LED lighting have the ability to be dimmed. Do you have any plans to dim them after hours?
I personally would not be the one to be doing the dimming of the lights. It would be up to the discretion of the property owner.
Fair enough.
I would think, Mr. Chairman, as a reasonable condition that the board would impose a dimming of after hours for these LED lighting, considering there is a residential neighborhood to the east.
Absolutely. Well, normally, we would actually ask to find out from the property owner what kind of schedule they might have for the lighting, and whether that's total shut-off at a certain time, with random safety lights, of course, or whether that would be a dimming during certain hours.
Well, does this location have shift work? Do they have people work during the night? Anybody know that?
ADP?
Yeah.
Well, that's a good question now.
Well, if we're talking about dimming the lights, I'd like to know if anybody's still working there.
Probably maintenance later, but I mean, I know for the most part, they're probably shutting down at, you know.
I think safety
There's no
will be
second
important.
shift or anything going on?
Their primary hours are 8 to 5.
Okay.
I'm pretty sure there's second shifts overseas.
Very likely. What would be the board's wishes with regard to any scheduling of lighting with regard to being the proximity? I mean, obviously, we're getting evidence that there's no spillover to the residential, but there still might be a sky brightening effect that has to be considered. And so it would be my position, I'm not going to speak for the whole board at this point, but my position would be that I would not want the sky to be brightened in the residential area, so that would imply that there should be some sort of cutoff or automatic dimming.
Well, I have the
After certain
impression that all of
hours.
these lights would be under the canopies.
That's correct.
All the new lights.
So there
yeah.
shouldn't be too much skylight if they're under the canopies pointing down.
Yeah, that's true.
I guess the existing office building must have some kind of schedule for the lighting. I mean, as long as they comply with that, nobody's complaining already about it.
And we've agreed to the 6 months.
Right. That makes sense.
The only thing would be the 6 month is a after-the-fact review based on a complaint received. So if this board requires some dimming, and you said the dimming is
Up to the owner.
up to the owner, and you guys just install the panels, and that's it, you have no control over the lighting.
Correct.
code enforcement would follow up at a later date if we've had a complaint anyway.
Okay, well, we've got an engineering review that goes up to 6 months away, and if it
That-
does,
That's 6 months from the receipt of final permits,
right,
so not from today.
I'm sorry, yes,
Just
you are
to-
correct.
Just to be sure that,
You are correct. Any other members?
Quick questions. Is there any difference between the lighting under the 6-panel canopy versus 8-panel canopies?
I'm sorry?
Is there any difference between the lighting in terms of power or whatever between the 6-panel canopies and 8-panel canopies?
No, all the canopies.
Or is it the same?
The lighting will be the same on all each panel, right? Meaning the intensity.
Yes, yeah.
It will be different, right? Is it more powerful for 8-panel canopy or?
Not, I wouldn't say it's more powerful. I would say there's a little bit of a height difference, right? There's 2-foot difference in height, so in terms of
So will it be
proximity to
yeah.
the pavement, right, where the light would be located, maybe slightly different. But in terms of intensity, you wouldn't know the difference standing under.
So, but will it be sufficient to lit the walkway? That's really my question, right?
Yes, yes.
Okay.
It can't quite make it isotropic and homogeneous.
Okay.
But any other questions by
I'm good,
members of the? No? Hearing no more questions at this time, are there any members of the public? Seeing no, Mr. Planner?
If I may, I think I misunderstood some testimony. I believe I heard earlier in the hearing that this walkway that's shown on A1 and A2 was going to remain. And then, Mr. Miller, I thought I heard you say that it is going to be removed. Can we clarify?
So
Can be
make sure I
rebuilt.
understand. I think the walkway area is going to remain, correct?
That's correct. The steel structure itself will be removed. but the
How
sidewalk
about
will
the,
remain.
well, we have a curb and we have a sidewalk.
So is this going to be, this area, this is what the planner's asking, the walkway itself, is that going to be removed?
No, that will remain.
Okay,
So then this area, would you agree to fix any of those areas?
Yeah, that's a standard. Any sort of broken piece of sidewalk on that walkway as part of this construction, right?
Did you
No.
testify that you were gonna tear up what's there and rebuild it? Or are you just going to fix what's there
We would repair what's there currently.
and remove the little boxes of the diamonds of the planters?
Yes.
Until then.
Mhm.
so that was actually my next question, Mr. Chairman. So those, I don't know what you call that shape, but those diamonds, truncated diamonds, they're gonna be filled in on the walkway side. They're gonna be I'm asking this question, they're gonna be totally removed. They're gonna be filled in on the walkway side with concrete, and then on the parking lot side where you actually have the triangular piece, they're going to be paved to match the side, the macadam, the parking lot?
Yes.
Okay, so there would be no
more Vs, per
no
se.
more Vs,
It would be-
there'd be no more planting areas there.
Correct.
The bollards are going to be removed,
Correct.
and some measure of parking protection, whether it's wheel stops or something else suitable to the board engineer, is going to be installed.
Yeah, we'd certainly work with the board engineer.
Okay, I think I understand. Thank you. And, the pavement striping, is that going to be restriped?
That I personally don't know. I've seen various outcomes. It really depends on the status of the lines,
Well, I'm looking at the status of the
Yeah.
lines.
It's gonna have to be, I think.
Yeah, I hear you.
I would recommend that that be made a condition of approval.
I agree that there be at least some new striping in the areas that are affected by them.
If I may, Mr. Chairman? So you keep mentioning approval of the owner. I assume that's ADP?
That is correct.
Have they not been in contact with you about resurfacing, repainting, nothing? They just kind of hire you guys and say, do your thing, or is there some communication? It seems like there's no communication.
No, we communicate very frequently.
But not on striping or resurfacing?
Yeah, that's more of their engineering department. My focus is particularly surrounding the solar canopies.
I'm sure, the solar canopy is obviously very important. We all agree with that. Just these certain things, there's puddles in this parking lot. And maybe resurfacing the whole parking lot is the first thing you guys should do. But then again, I'm not getting into the finances of that, but I'm sure it's quite expensive. But, there's certain things here. This parking lot's in bad shape in a lot of spots. So I can't imagine ADP did not, consult you guys asking things like that. Should we repave this? Should we reseal it? Repaint lines? Anything?
Yeah, we're a solar company, though. We're not a,
Agreed. I understand. I'm saying, so where was the communication there? You said yes, but it doesn't sound like it, though, in this case. Other things, I'm sure, but when it comes to the resurfacing, no, it doesn't sound like it.
Well, I guess that question leads me to the question, we have some conditions of approval that you're making representations of without the actual owner of the property being here. How are we going to be assured that those conditions of approval are going to be adhered to?
Well, number one, if the condition of an approval, in that approval, they have to be adhered to, or we are not going to see the permits and everything else that we need.
Well, I guess
So the question would be, is whether or not the applicant has the right to bind any of those conditions. And all the conditions that have been raised so far, we have no issue with, because they relate to the application that's pending before the board. So when you're talking about the walkway and filling in that area, that's an area that is going to be affected by the installation of the solar carport. So that's clearly in the purview of the applicant. So the applicant is testifying, no issue on those conditions there, that is it. Relative to the parking lot, that is not within, that's outside of their contract. They don't have any control over the condition of the parking lot and the painting or the striping, except as it might affect where the carport panels are going,
But you're here with a request for site plan approval.
as it relates to solar carport.
But normally we have because I sent out one of my office staff today. Unfortunately, I wasn't able to attend, and took pictures of the site today. And normally we have, I've been with the town 32 years. I've rarely heard an application where the property owner or a representative from the property owner is here to address. There are giant potholes in the parking lot that my car could fall in. There are code violations in the parking lot that I would have addressed them tonight with the property owner, but without that representative here, what's to say that they're going to meet those conditions? Because you say that, well, you're not going to get permits. Well, I'm from zoning and construction. I'm the director of planning, zoning, and construction. We give you permits first, then you go do the work. We are then forced, if you don't meet those conditions, to write summonses and violation notices, and then we don't want to do that. We want it, it's usually a representative here who agrees, that knows going into it, that we're not forced after the work is done, that these things aren't met, that then we have to enforce.
Or to come back here, I apologize, but to come back here in a couple of months with a request from you to eliminate some of these conditions. And we don't want to be here that way.
Yeah, and we'd like to get our approval tonight.
Right.
So-
But we can even see in A1.
So let me just address a couple of the issues so that I have.
Okay, but I'm just gonna say, in A1, there's clearly a failure in the drain, right there. That's right there in A1. And that's gonna get to the drainage from the solar panels. It's all related.
I hear you. Okay. So there's a couple of things. And I did meet you when I submitted the application, whatever initially, and ADP is a very large company, and I would say that clearly, if anybody has a code violation, that's outside of the pending application, as it doesn't relate to the application, by all means, issue whatever violation or notice of, potential violation. I mean, I heard loud and clear first moment of this application that this board wants that parking lot paved. I mean, so that, my note is make sure that I deliver that to ADP, because I don't think it would be their intent to not be a good neighbor. I mean, it's been a rough couple of years for everybody, but they are a business. They are been here for a while. The fact that they're looking to put solar carport canopies, to me, without them telling, indicates that they want to stay here, and that they're looking to continue on the site. So again, we can't, as I said, if the board wants to impose certain conditions in their approval regarding that, there's nothing that I can do. That's for the board to decide. But if it's anything that has to do with a violation, that's outside of the pending application. And as I said, my client is not ADP. And I will tell you, I have represented other clients and this client as well before other boards. Owners are never there. Owners, I mean, I do a fair amount of land use where even if we're a contract purchaser, owners are rarely there. It's up to the applicant to submit the application in front of the board. So, I mean, if the board felt strongly that they wanted a representative, I've represented ADP as well, not in Parsippany, but in other municipalities. They're an extremely hands-on, really great company to work with. So, if I thought that they needed to be here tonight, if the board I would have made sure there was a representative, but I'm not in a million years studying.
What we would have liked would have been to have somebody available to respond to the questions that we think are very closely related to the application. You can say that they're separate. To my mind, they're not.
I hear what you're saying, but I'm saying is if there's code violations, if your zoning official just stated that went out there and there are...
Usually when an applicant comes with a case like this before us, they want to tell us not only how wonderful it is that they're doing this, but that they're going to clean up all sorts of other things too that goes with it. So we're going to walk out with a nice, bright, shiny new parking area with these on top of it, and that's not what we're getting here. That's all.
I hear you, and I would suspect if you're going to go through all this, that's the way too.
I know them well enough to know that you're probably completely right, but there's nobody here to tell me that.
Let me just ask our attorney then. If we put the provisions in that the parking lot needs to be improved or upgraded, maybe not all new blacktop, but maybe seal,
and striped, right?
fill in the potholes and seal it or patch it, whatever, okay? And we put that in as our requirement. Does that help your case? Then let's put it in.
I think that's fair enough.
Yeah, I think you've proceeded with the permission of ADP, correct? This application was filed with the permission of ADP. The solar panels are going on top of the existing 5 aisles and parking area. Parking areas, as provided by our board member and our zoning officer, is that it's in disrepair. You'll make those repairs as a condition of approval.
Right, so I just want to make sure that in a condition of approval, it's exactly what you just were speaking to. That would be filling in any of the potholes, potentially.
This gentleman will draw it up, and if you have any questions, you can talk to him.
Because there's a big cost differential between saying just, repave the whole parking lot.
Yeah, I wasn't calling for that.
And seal coating, so I just want to make sure.
Yeah, my wording was
I'm sure
upgrading.
ADP, they're a big company, but I don't want to spending all of it.
My wording was upgrading the parking lot, seal it.
Stripe it. Fill potholes.
I think the easy one is removing any dangerous conditions, right?
I think that's fair enough.
That's a general welfare
And I'm going to throw out there,
analysis.
I suspect that their employees have probably been working remote for the last, year and a half, 2 years, so maybe that, I don't think there's been a lot of activity on that
I
site.
think it's appropriate to perhaps leave this in our very capable engineers' hands and building officials' hands to say that any unsafe conditions, including potholes, cracks, broken curbing, raised sidewalks, all that stuff needs to be fixed.
Just put the conditions in, because I agree with the attorney here. ADP wouldn't invest this kind of money, with regards to the property. So you put the conditions in, you say this is the conditions to approve it, so we can move forward.
Thank you. Good.
Agreed. Any other questions of,
Just to comment on that, just for the ADP's purpose, if they run their cost analysis, the effort and cost to pave a parking lot after you have the canopies up is dramatically higher than doing the work prior to. So that's a consideration for them. If they were thinking of repaving the lot 5 years from now, the cost will go way up higher when the paving equipment and the dump trucks have to be working around the canopy and use special equipment to pave underneath there. So it's really in their best interest to get that lot up into a condition that's going to last 5 or 10 years or longer prior to actually installing the canopies. Maybe after the piers and the columns are up, prior to the canopies going. It becomes very expensive to pave underneath those canopies, and maybe you guys have experience with that.
Thank you very much.
Yeah.
Appreciate that.
That's gonna be.
all right? I guess that's that testimony. So I'm gonna ask if there's anybody in the public. Seeing nobody in the public that wishes to speak, now we have to address the planning issues for the variances.
Okay. Well, I guess the only variance would be potentially a height variance.
Correct.
Because it's a 15 feet is permitted in the zone, and not shown on the plans is that they're potentially 21 to 20, no, I'm sorry.
23 feet,
Yeah, 20
1 and
23.
13 16 inches.
No, 23, right?
Yeah,
So so the height variance would be 21 to 23, right? As shown on A3.
Correct, 21.4 for
Yeah, 'cause it's
6H.
14 and it goes up, so it's 14 on the one side, you're compliant. It's when the canopy goes to the other side, they're at 21 feet or 23 feet.
Correct.
Right, I would say, just given the fractions of a foot here, I would round up and go to 22 and 24, if the board accepts that.
You okay with that? Right.
Do you need the
So-
ordinance section?
I'll find it.
Yeah, especially if we have to measure from the potholes of the parking lot. The base grade.
If you repave it, you might not need as much.
This is true, you know, well, as I said, so on the 22 and the 24, so if you're permitted accessory structure in the zone, obviously, as the planner and the engineer knows, solar panels are inherently beneficial use in the state of New Jersey. There is public policy that we want solar, as much solar as possible, and solar carports fit right within that criteria. So as designed, to be able to fit into the lot and to be able to not impede the current flow of traffic and any possible trucks or, SUVs that are going to park under there, there's a requirement for the height to be the 22 and the 24. So I would say that there's certainly no negative impact to your master plan and zoning ordinances because it's a permitted accessory structure, so it's just relative to the height. And this is a huge site, it's almost 18 acres. And other than the residential neighbors on the one side, they're not even going to see this. Their site distance is going to be so far, and there's such a significant buffer. I don't see the negative asset, and it's an open structure. There aren't sides on it. So I would respectfully submit that we meet all the criteria for a C variance relative to the height, and request that the board would grant the variance relief as part of our preliminary and major site plan approval that we're seeking this evening with the conditions that we can go through again if we'd like to, but as discussed, because we're seeking.
We'll do that. We'll go through all of the conditions
Oh, good.
before.
Okay,
Yes.
good.
Is the engineer gonna say that it needs to be this high so that emergency vehicles can go underneath it?
100%. The engineer's
That
going
was
to
a good
say
closing
exactly that. Fire trucks need to potentially get through, and that's the reason for the height.
I would ask one question, that's the reason for the low end of the height. Is there a reason that the angle of the canopy requires it to go up as high as it does?
From a safety, or you mean from a,
You're the applicant, you just tell me why the high end has to be as high as it is.
there is an inherent, angle that the earth is to the sun. So, without that proper angle, the solar panels won't work. That's one. Number two is obviously for, access of vehicles. But the major is it provides for runoff. Okay, so the rain goes to the gutters, but it's for the effects of how the inherent solar panels work.
Maximum exposure to the sun.
Well, Mr. Miller, you've designed other solar facilities such as this, on other buildings?
Several.
Several? Are they all have this kind of tilt to it?
It varies. I would say the typical tilt, right? It depends on your latitude, right? It could be anything from 4 degrees to 7.5, depending on the system type. In this case, I believe it's 5 degrees, 5.5 degrees. It's not showed on there. It's part of the productivity though, so yes.
So you recommended this particular type of degree based on the location of this site relative to the sun?
Exactly.
Okay, thank you.
I have a general question. Are any of these solar panels made in the United States? I know there's only one company that, in the United States, that makes solar panels. Most of them are overseas. And the two parking lots we have now with solar panels, none of them were made in the USA. So I'm just curious.
I personally don't know.
Your one page here shows engineered in Germany. Is that accurate? Top left picture, bottom corner of that picture.
That would be accurate, yes.
I think the Germans make the ancillary equipment and not the panels themselves. I could be wrong.
Yeah, I was curious about the panels.
Okay.
And what's the lifespan of these panels, just from my knowledge?
These panels, I mean, the lifespan of the project is certainly different, but they last anywhere from 25 to 30 years.
Okay.
Yeah, the last applicant we had said 25 years.
And if there is malfunctions, they're replaced, obviously.
Right,
Of course,
and I'm trying to remember that they would retain like
85%.
85% efficiency, yeah, that sounds right. So, all right,
Quick question for the board professionals. Is 14 height on the lower end of the panels, is that sufficient for the emergency vehicles? Good enough?
14 feet is the minimum height of any public highway or structure. That's the
Is
height
it
of any
good?
bridge
Yeah.
on any highway, the minimum clearance.
Okay,
So it'll pass any vehicle on the road.
all right.
right?
I'm sorry, the Andrew Reese was there.
Day job, you probably deal with that more than I do.
Yeah.
All right, I assume that's your case. I don't see any members of the public come up to speak either in favor of or in opposition of. I guess that closes the evidentiary portion of this case at this time. Are there any comments that the board wishes to make at this time? Anybody?
Mr. Chairman, comment?
Mr. Didich?
So, I just want to thank, right, I think it's a very good project. Parsippany in general supports all green efforts very much. Anything which can reduce our carbon footprint is very appreciated, right? So in general, I just congratulate the applicant for a very great project, regardless of approval or rejection, right? That's a separate thing, but I just want to congratulate on this, just having the project. Thank you.
All right, any other comments by members of the board? Is there somebody willing to frame a resolution with a whole mess of requirements here that our attorney is going to read off as they start the process of moving the resolution?
Mr. Chairman, I'll make a motion to approve this application, subject to Dan, you want to read the conditions?
I will.
Well, first, I guess I'm making the motion. I'll make any statements later. Go ahead.
Sure. So condition is a revision of the zoning table, provide parking data, dimensions of the columns, provide sufficient passage for the walkway, light plan details, drainage details, screen the equipment, the equipment pad at the building. That would be at the height requirement of whatever the fence, I think is a 6-foot high fence in that
So
location.
that would be working with our professionals about
Correct.
the process of screening the,
That's correct, and whatever material they would like to use as the screening. Add additional trees to other areas at the direction of the township. You want to say shade tree or forester?
the forester, they would work in conjunction with the forester to determine if and whether they could replant some of the trees.
Correct. 6-month review of lighting from final inspection. Offer a training program for the township first responders as to the shut-off capabilities of the system. Provide Morris County Soil Conservation District either a waiver or comply with whatever requirements come from that department. Repaint, restripe the parking spaces affected by the carport installation. And I have this as fix dangerous conditions in the parking lot, including repaving the parking lot in its entirety.
I didn't think we wanted to add the repave the parking lot in its entirety, but we just wanted to bring it up to a suitable condition, right?
Improve the parking lot.
So I could say fix dangerous conditions in the parking lot, including repaving repaving any uneven surfaces. Again, I'll try to craft the language in terms of,
Filling in any potholes and resealing is really the minimum.
Again, I like dangerous conditions because, that could not just necessarily be potholes, but uneven surfaces.
But they might interpret that differently than you.
Well, I'm gonna rely on our township professionals to determine what's a dangerous condition.
Well, you could say deteriorated parking areas within the areas of the proposed canopies.
And restriping.
So fix deteriorated parking lot, and removal, I like the dangerous conditions, including repaving, resurfacing, those areas.
Working with the engineer to determine how and what needs to be done.
Do you want to recommend restriping too?
That was
Well,
already
there's
stated.
certainly parts of it that
Already
have to be, because it's dangerous and it would be a violation to have an area that was not properly striped.
Yeah, the striping has to be compliant yes, that's period, that condition, striping must be in sufficient order and compliant with standards.
Understood.
Any more?
Hang on.
Those are
That was
all
it.
I-
No, that was it.
Last page.
All right, we've got a motion. Do I hear a second?
I'll second.
Mr. DiPiero. Nora, would you call the roll, please?
Barbario,
Yes.
Dedige,
Yes.
DePiero,
Yes.
Math,
I'm going to vote yes, and I would like to emphasize that I believe that to the extent that variance relief is required for the height of accessory structures, that is justified by the engineering necessity of the solar panels.
Napolitano,
No.
Stanzio,
Yes.
Severly,
Yes.
Dinsmore.
Yes.
Thank you very much. We very much appreciated your time this evening.
Okay.
And look forward to the rest of the day.
Our council will work diligently on that.
Thank you, folks.
Have it at some point in time in the future.
We don't have another meeting in February, but the first meeting is the first week of March.
Oh, the 14th is canceled?
Yes. My bad. It would not be ready for the 14th.
Good night, everybody.
All right.
Good night. Good night, Frank.
Hey, Tom, you gotta adjourn the meeting.
Yes?
Motion to adjourn.
Don't get out of here.
Do I hear a motion to adjourn the meeting?
Motion to adjourn.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Second that.
Appreciate it.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
The rest of us sit here.
In the dark.
Should be happy businesses. Should be happy businesses. Okay. Yeah, a lot of them.
Gotta make someone tell them that goes there.